What's going on, everyone? It's Max the Vampire Fish here, and today I am bringing you my top 20 tips and tricks for V Rising. I am deep into this game. I am hooked, and I want to share with you what I think to be the most important tips for beginners and intermediate players. So get your cloaks on. Let's jump right into it. When you leave the tutorial graveyard, you use the shift key to jump down into the Farbane Woods. Well, you can actually jump off of any cliffside in the game, which can be incredibly useful to unlock shortcuts, to escape from enemies attacking you, or even create ambushes against unsuspecting targets in PvP. This can even be used in your transformation forms like wolf form without breaking the transformation for really quick travel around the world. Not all blood is created equal. All normal human NPCs have a blood type and a quality that you can consume to gain powerful bonuses. The blood type determines what perks you get when you consume it. So brute blood increases physical damage and your health recovery, whereas rogue blood increases movement speed, critical damage, and the cooldown of your movement ability. There are a ton of different types of blood to experiment with. Now, blood quality, on the other hand, ranges from 1% to 100%, and that determines how strong of a blood type bonus you're going to receive from that blood. 1% blood is practically worthless, while 100% blood gives you the maximum benefit of that blood type. Put simply, the higher your blood quality, the more powerful you're going to be. Keep in mind, every single time you feed, you'll replace your blood type and your quality with the new blood. It's not additive, so feed very carefully, though I have a tip coming up that you're really going to want to hear about feeding. To that point on blood type and quality, you can figure out the type and quality of every human by mousing over them, even before entering combat. You can use this to find high quality blood and create a plan of attack to feed on that delicious human, ideally by killing everybody else first and then feeding on your target last. You can only feed on humans that are still alive, so you have to be really careful not to accidentally kill them before you're able to feed. But if things are getting messy, remember that you can always feed in the middle of combat if you need to. You're still going to take damage from enemies that attack you, but it might just be worth it for that tasty human juice. If you're having a little bit of trouble taking down a big group of enemies, or you want to target a single enemy for their blood, you can often pull them one at a time using a crossbow, or by casting a magical attack that doesn't do a knockback or any AoE damage. This will allow you to take on opponents one-on-one, and makes it really easy to take the rest of the group on later. This tip is especially useful, though, before fighting powerful V-blood carriers that are surrounded by NPCs. If you take out the underlings first, then you can focus purely on the boss. Now, that tip about feeding. You can use feeding as your most powerful combat ability to instantly kill enemies without replacing your blood type or quality. Normally, holding the feed button kills the enemy and consumes their blood, which overrides your previous blood type and the quality that you had before. That's great if you have a low quality blood, but if you have a really high quality blood and you feed, you're going to lose it. So instead, if you feed on a weak enemy and press the left mouse button while feeding, you will kill them instantly, and your blood type and quality will remain the same. This is an incredibly powerful combat ability to use against NPC enemies, and depending on which direction you're moving using the WASD keys after feeding, your vampire will actually lurch in that direction after feeding on that enemy. Keep in mind, this doesn't work in PvP, so to feed on an enemy vampire in PvP, you need to defeat them completely in combat first. However, my biggest tip for feeding is that if you are caught out in combat in the middle of the day, you can feed to reset your sunlight meter. This will prevent you from taking any sunlight damage and is a really great tool to use during those daytime fights. One last blood tip. You can extend the use of your blood type by using vermin salves instead of using blood mend. If you have a powerful blood in your blood pool, you're going to want to make that last as long as possible. The blood in your blood pool drains over time, but healing yourself with blood mend will consume it even faster, which will force you to replace the blood sooner than maybe you'd like to. So if you're holding a high quality blood, Instead of using blood mend to heal, consider crafting vermin salves in your personal crafting or at the alchemy table, and use those instead. These heal you for about a third of your HP, and they don't consume blood to do it, which will ensure that you can enjoy the benefits of a strong blood type for even longer. Now, progressing in V-Rising can sometimes be a little bit unclear if you're just getting started especially. If a quest requires you to build a building you haven't learned or a recipe you haven't unlocked yet, you should check the Blood Altar for clues. The Blood Altar lists the current V-Blood carriers that you can fight at your current gear score, and also shows you the recipes and schematics that each boss unlocks when you defeat them. V-Blood carriers in the Blood Altar are only unlocked for you to track once your gear score is high enough, so make sure your priority in the game is always to increase the quality of your equipment and increase your gear score. The other place you might want to look if you're stuck in the game is on the map. The map tracks where you've explored so far and keeps information about other players' castle locations and NPC camps around the world. Once you discover one of these camps, it's going to appear on your map and your mini-map, but expanding your map and hovering over an area with your mouse will tell you what resources you can find there. It's super helpful for finding and gathering resources that you need for that next piece of equipment or that next production building. You can also put a waypoint on your map by right-clicking anywhere once you have it open. This places an icon on your minimap, but it also puts a guide on your screen that points you in the direction of your destination, so you don't have to check the map so often. You can use this to guide you towards that NPC camp that you want to farm for resources. Speaking of camps, you'll not only find enemies here, but also lootable treasure chests, crates and barrels that can be broken for resources, even rare lockboxes full of crafting materials and schematics that will give you a new item or cosmetic. Schematics look like book icons in your inventory, and on the ground they appear as glowing gold items. Bring these back to your research table, learn how to craft them, and you'll improve your gear score and your castle. Along the lines of research, be sure not to throw away paper, scrolls, or any duplicate schematics. You can spend 50 paper at your research table to unlock a random research, or 75 scrolls at your study to do the same. You can also use duplicate schematics to either trade with other players, or you can feed them to your Devourer to get paper or scrolls in return. Speaking of the Devourer, this mimic will break apart any extra armor or weapons you might find out there in the wilds, but do me a favor and hold on to some extra weapons and armor in a chest somewhere in your castle. Without spoiling anything for you, you're going to need them sometime in the near future. Alright, let's talk about castles now. When building your first castle, I actually recommend that you leave several trees standing in the palisades to use as shade from the sun. This will make it easier for you to use and learn the different production buildings required to progress in the game. You can always place down a mist brazier if you want to give yourself outdoor shade, but if you want to save those well-earned bones for some other uses, I'd recommend keeping those trees alive. Also worth noting, anything you build in your castle can be disassembled within about 60 seconds for a full refund. And beyond this 60-second timer, you'll actually get back 75% of your materials that you used to build it, but you're always free to move around your production buildings, your chests, your cosmetic items as much as you want without deconstructing them. They'll even bring with them the items that they're holding, so you don't have to empty them out before redecorating your cathedral. When you're choosing a place for your castle, choose wisely. At the start, with a level 1 castle heart, you can actually only create 30 borders, but when you upgrade your castle heart, this number increases dramatically. Eventually, you're going to need rooms in your castle for different production processes, so be sure to give yourself plenty of room to expand when choosing the place to place down your first castle heart. If you're wandering the Farbane Woods and you see a castle in decay at a location that you'd like to build, you're going to need to find its castle heart. It's the first building you create when you start a new castle, and it's also the heart of your castle itself. If someone is able to access your castle heart, they can destroy that castle. You can do the same. You can hold the F key to interact with it and click Destroy, which will destroy the entire castle and free up space for one of your own. But instead of destroying the castle, you can actually craft keys that will allow you to take control of it yourself. This will save you a ton of materials and time creating your own castle, and you can even use this to tear the castle down and gain the materials it costs to build it. Not all servers allow this feature, so be sure to check if yours does before you start making enemies smashing doors down. Gathering resources can be incredibly time-consuming, especially if you plan on building a gigantic castle like many of us do. So before going out to harvest resources, head to the mines or the logging camp in the Farbane Woods and pick up some worker blood. This will give you a gigantic boost to your resource collection, and it cuts down on the amount of time that you spend whacking at trees unless you focus on some of the more fun elements of the game like building or combat. Also, don't forget that better weapons and tools will gather resources faster, so be sure to upgrade your axe and your hammer whenever possible at the workbench. If you're having some trouble finding high-quality worker blood, or if you're looking for high-quality blood of any type really, make sure that you clear out NPCs in the areas that you've been searching. NPCs spawn with a completely random blood quality, so it's better to kill low-quality NPCs and let new ones spawn. You might actually find that coveted 100 quality you've been looking for. There is a use for every item in the game, and usually you're able to turn large quantities of one resource, like blood essence, into smaller quantities of another improved resource, in this case, greater blood essence. If you find your chests overflowing with a duplicate resource, try to find a recipe that consumes a lot of it. You'll be saving inventory space, and you'll be improving the resources you have in your castle. If you're having a hard time taking down specific V-Blood carriers, consider switching your abilities up. Craft potions, improve your armor and weapons, or wait for a Blood Moon. Blood Moons increase your attack damage by 20% and your movement speed by 10%. It's a huge boon for taking down tough bosses. Every boss has different strengths and weaknesses that you can exploit as well. So AoE abilities work really well for bosses that summon a lot of enemies, where quick single target abilities are better for bosses who fight alone. Potions especially are going to give you an edge up on bosses at your level that might be giving you some trouble. So make sure you check the alchemy table to see if there's something you can craft there to give you an edge up. And don't forget, if you're really stuck on a boss, you can co-op it with another player. All bosses, V-Blood, can actually be consumed by multiple players at a time, so bring as many as it takes for you to take them down. Just remember, bosses will scale up their abilities based on how many people go to fight them, so you may be fighting an even tougher boss than you fought the first time alone. If you found these tips helpful, don't forget to drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and let me know down in the comments if there's something that I missed, if there's something you'd like a little bit more explanation about. I'm planning on making a series of guides for V-Rising because I love this game, and I would love to know what you'd like to see. Maybe guides on building or PvP, maybe some boss combat guides. You let me know. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.